Welcome to Paint Ed. PCA provides painting contractors with connections they need to grow their business. To find out more and to become a member, visit pcapainted.org. Find more great content just like this on PCA Overdrive. A subscription to the platform is included with membership. For all you non-members out there, sign up for a free trial. PCA Overdrive is available on the App Store and Google Play. This episode is brought to you by Federated Insurance.
The train falls off the tracks, you know where to look at. And when you have a process that is repeatable and predictable, 9 times out of 10, when things go wrong, it's a people problem if the process is dialed in, right? And if your process is good, then it's a people problem. Until the process is dialed in, you can't blame the person because you don't have the process. Welcome to episode 3 of our 4-part Sales 401 series here on the Elite Business Advice podcast. My name is Chris Moore, the founder of Elite Business Advisor, your host of the podcast here. Today, we've got my good friend, one of our advisors, Stuart, with us again to talk through today's topic. He's going to help wrap up this series with us next week as well. Today, we're going to talk all about sales framework and repeatable processes. These are some of my favorite things. I love systems. I love repeatable processes. I love structure around things, even to the fault that sometimes my wife may divorce me at home because I want to put so many systems and structure in place at home about the simplest, dumbest things. I love it. So I'm going to try not to nerd out on this too much. I know this is also Stuart's strength as well. So this could easily turn into a 4-hour episode if we're not careful. But if you missed the last 2 episodes, we talked about the fundamentals in week 1 of sales. We talked about sales psychology last week, talked about need and want selling. Go back and listen to them. Would encourage you to do it before diving into this one today. We're kind of built this in a way to where they kind of build off each other and go from the fundamentals into a little bit more higher level type stuff. So I would encourage you to go back and listen to it if you have not already. And so today, like I said, we're going to talk about building a repeatable process, why it's important, and why it's important to be intentional with your sales framework to maximize your chances of closing the sale. See, way too many people doing estimates just to go get numbers to customers, and there's not a lot of intentionality behind it. There's not a repeatable process. They aren't analyzing it to identify ways where they can maybe land 5 or 10% more of their jobs. It's just like I'm just doing this and kind of burning through the leads that come in and just doing quotes and just doing what I'm supposed to do without kind of thinking through how do we become more intentional about this, right? If you could just close 5 or 10% more of the bids you're already doing, what would that do to your finances? What would that do to help with your backlog? And how much time would that save you? Right. And so that's why I want to be very intentional on trying to dive deeper into these things here today and why this is an important step that many painting contractors miss. So I hope it helps. Thanks for plugging in. This is the Elite Business Advice podcast. Stuart, episode 2 had even more value than episode 1 did, in my opinion, in my personal opinion. So if they had to take one thing away from it, what would it be for you? I want to hear what your feedback was on this.
Thinking through it again, probably the big thing was tying in strategy with like a humanist approach. And I think
yes,
it's looked at as it's one or the other. But I actually think reflecting on it, we as a company do quite a good job of merging those two together.
Yep. It's some of my favorite feedback to get from people. They're like, you guys are genuine human beings. And I was like, thank you. That's really good to know because that's how we want it to come across. So I'm always relieved to hear that's how we actually come across to people. So that was great. That makes mine look like crap. For me, I think the biggest thing that we talked about last week that you did a really good job of bringing home is how do you take the want and need selling, but tie it into their emotions. I love the promo clip that came out last week. That was it was like a snippet of what you said in that. And it was talking about like taking their wants, their daughter going back to school, pairing it with some product knowledge, but also invoking the emotion into it all in one swoop. And I think that's why you're on here for this conversation. That's why you built out our sales training that you're going through with some of our clients and more people in the industry, more to come on that. as that continues to become more popular and more released. But you understand it and you're able to pair things together. And I think that's why you were always such a good estimator. I think that's why you're a perfect person to be teaching on this stuff. So let's dive into today, because I know we got a lot to cover. And again, it won't take much for this to be a 4-hour episode. So for you personally, why do you think like a process matters more than just being naturally charismatic or good looking or charming?
Well, I can't speak for any of the latter two. Maybe the
By
but
the way,
no,
I've seen your wife. You were a great salesperson. So, like that in and of itself, go find Stuart on Instagram. You will understand he's really good at sales. Continue. Sorry.
sold on the dream. I'll just text her to put her profile in private.
Yeah.
So, what was your question again? You asked me about.
Why do you think a process matters more than being naturally charismatic?
I got it. I got it. So I think charisma is going to get you so far, and I think I probably learned a little bit about that when I started my company, and even though I had a slight process, it was very vague. But you can't teach charisma, and you can't pinpoint charisma. When you have a process that you follow and you train, it means that results are consistent. It means that if
Yep.
the train falls off the tracks, you can figure out exactly where. You can't just say, well, it's because I didn't smile as much that day. You know exactly where you lost that person. Also, then when the production crews are going to follow in behind, we're going to have a process that what we spoke about is going to be very similar. What we promised is going to be very similar. And that means we know what we're delivering on. Whereas, again, just charisma and just winging it, we're going to be talking about all sorts of different things. Some estimators are doing 15 to 20 estimates in a week, and there's just no way that they're going to remember that, or they're going to take enough notes to know who they said what to, essentially. So,
Yep, that's great. As we talk about having a process, I think you said you had yours broken down into 4 steps. Is that correct? In some of our conversations, walk us through what those 4 steps look like as kind of having that process together. That's that repeatable pattern, if you will.
Okay. So I like it's a 4/5 step framework. Step 1 is going to be this is actually when you're within the home. I guess it starts on the phone call, because it's all about step 1's all about the overview.
Yep.
Why are we here? Right? What's the reason that you've called me here for? What specific needs do we have? So it's kind of you're trying to really get to the root of why you're there.
Okay.
What past experiences have you had? And at this point, it's where I want the client to do most of the talking. People are going to trust their own conclusions a lot more than they trust what I've got to say.
Yep.
So that's all the discovery part, and that's why I say 4 or 5, because that can really be tied in as one. The second step is where we do the confirmation and empathize with them, because we know we're doing this every single day. They maybe dealt with this 15 years ago, but we know what other competitors and stuff are doing out there. It's not always nice things. So, second thing is confirm and empathize. So that'll be where we restate their problem in their words.
Like it.
We confirm that we understand, and we actually acknowledge those past frustrations. So, hey, Mrs. Jones, you told me that you were spent hours afterwards getting in between the floorboards, cleaning up the dust. They said they were going to have the floors protected. Again, I empathize with you. Like, I'm a busy professional, and I can't imagine having to come home and deal with that and talk about my stressful life already. So that's the confirm and empathize. That's step 2. Second, now that we've understood their problems and their fears and everything that they've actually disclosed to us, because there's going to be other things that they haven't, is where we talk about the 3 pillars we spoke about last week, where we sell the solution. So that's when we start to talk about the simplicity, stress-free, 7-step process, clear communication, the certainty. We do what we say, when we say, with guaranteed outcomes, speed, quick completion without compromising quality. The key trigger to be looking out for at that step 3, is the head nodding. It's that whole, yeah, he's speaking my language. He knows
Yep.
exactly how I feel. And again, that's not to be mistaken by, we're not playing a game here. Like, we genuinely understand how they feel because we deal with people who have had these same problems over and over and over again. And it actually is the reason that we have to charge a little bit less than maybe we should as a finishing trade, because too many times people have let us down in the past. So now we're fighting an uphill battle of trust.
Yep.
So step three. Step four, social proof and reconfirming. So this is where we've said everything, we've identified everything that they're unhappy about. We went through the home actually at this point and understood exactly the areas, the scope, and all that fun stuff. Now we come back and we tie in some photos of what they've spoke about in terms of their pain, and then some photos of what we've taken today, and then some past photos or reviews that have spoke specifically to those problems that they mentioned earlier. So this step is all about social proof and reconfirmation. And then straight up asking them, does this solve your problems? So again, the whole floorboards, we can talk about
Yep.
laying down RAM board. We can show them a photo of that. Then we can show them a review that says they've done a great job protecting all of our flooring furniture. Then asking them straight up, does this solve your problems? And they might have listed 2 to 3 problems. Our goal is to kind of trial close that, where we say, okay, we've solved this problem. Are you happy to move on? Now that we're showing you we've solved this problem, are you happy to move on? Um,
Yep.
and then that leads me then to the zoom in and the close. So that this part, which is a final step, step 5 in my process, is where we reconfirm the time frame, which will have already been set at the initial phone call when they would like the project done. Now we also talk about the things that everything we've just spoke about. So the scope,
Yep.
the specific needs. We ask them, does this all sound really good to you? Is there anything you're unsure about? Is there anything that I've not answered for you? No, 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 no. Or if there is, then you answer that.
Yep.
This is where we're zooming in. And then the last part is, here is the price. And then that's when we just kind of be quiet, let them think about it. How does everything compare? I actually was about to say, how does the price compare? I never asked that question because we don't want to make it about price. They've already showed you the whole way through that 5-step process. You've solved all their problems, which means it's ultimately going to be down to price. How do we compare against everyone else? And then you're sort of steering them away from the whole price thing and making it
Yep.
more about all of the other stuff that you spoke about in that 5-step process.
That's great. Yeah, I think that's one thing a lot of times people are like, oh, it's just like they're all about the price. And it's like, well, it is if you make it all about the price, right? If you're showing up for a transactional estimate, it's going to become all about the price. When you show up to understand their wants, their needs, their concerns, how you can solve that, how you can empathize with them, how you can have that level of service to take care of their problem for them, then it's become about the service. And yet the price is still important. The price is still relevant, but it's not all about the price, right? And so I think, again, just in the approach that I would rebuttal to with people when they say that is, what are you making it about? If you're making it all about the price and the numbers, because this is the transactional 30 minutes of your life, that's probably how they're going to take it as well. Right.
Mm-hmm.
If you make it about them, if you make it about the emotions, you make it about everything else we talked about last week, and you tie that into your process. I love it because I think for me, one of the biggest things is like you're going to iterate your process to what, like, I guess, objections you're hearing the most, right? Or what are the most common things, because you want to head those off before they even get to bring it up, right? You want them to talk about it, but how do we head that off beforehand? So I think it's great. Question for you, and this is something that I get from a lot of people, and I think you'd be a great person to ask this to. What are some things you can do at this estimate as part of your process to help set your crews and your operations team up for success every time, right? Because there's a big thing in the sales to production handoff, especially as you're growing your company and you hire somebody to help with production or operations, or maybe you eventually replace yourself as an estimator. That's a huge part of this, right? So I think as we're talking through process and framework, I think now is a great time to bring that up. Is like, how can we help set that handoff up for success in what you're doing at this process?
So the first thing that I do is again, I think we spoke about it a little bit last week. Just to touch on it, is analysing what that person wants right from the very jump, from the very first phone call. I spoke earlier in that 5-step process about I already understood their time frame. That's because we had detailed notes. We're not guessing anything. We're not asking the same question twice. We're reconfirming things, sure. That's a continuation. So between steps 2 and 3, where I'm confirming, empathizing, and then selling the solution, that's when I'll do my walkthrough with the client, walking through the property. And I actually tell them, while we're walking through, I'm not being rude, I'm taking notes. I'll actually always do it in a notebook as well, and then photograph that. Because I want to be taking little, just one-word things to remember absolutely everything, so that I can then reconfirm that to them at the end, so that the notes that actually survive all the way through to the production crew have already been reconfirmed by the client. Yep. So that's one thing. Using apps like Busy, Company Cam, to do photographs of everything and highlight things like that, and arrows, like timestamps, yep, square footage, whatever it is. It's amazing what you can do now. The last thing that I do at the walkthrough part, so I've taken my notes, I've reconfirmed them. They're then going at the final part of the walkthrough. I'll actually do a walkthrough I'd expect a walkthrough to be done with the client, doing the project walkthrough, just a 2-minute thing where it's high level. Yep. This not only sets your crew up for success, it sets everyone up for success, because it takes this whole he said, she said out of it. Because we actually will come out and say, hey, this video walkthrough will be then passed along to our team for everyone to always view. So that's a few things at the actual estimating part. And then the follow-up to that would be step 4. The next part of that would be when you go to the office, when you sell the job, all that information that you've taken gets put in a template, passed over to the production manager. And you could even go one step further and do a pre-project walkthrough between the estimator and the project manager. Whoever does that last pre-project walkthrough is the person who I have a 1-page document where they fill in access, how, dog's name is, that's the specific stuff. Because I actually don't want the estimator being so in the weeds about the dog's name and stuff like that when they're trying to focus on the sale and the numbers. But once the job's sold, I really want to give them that next level of commitment and attention to detail.
That's awesome. It's the little things that go a long way with that, right? I think I agree. I think you already hit on it, but I mean, just to recap, like just taking good notes, especially if there is, because it's something that should be in mind when you're estimating. One thing for us was like, what additional equipment do we need that we don't carry with us every day, right? We didn't carry, for the most part, even on our interiors, we didn't carry 24-foot ladders everywhere we went. Mm-hmm. We would always maybe have a 20 or have an A-frame. So it's like, do we need a 24 or even a 32-foot ladder in a spot? Do we need any scaffolding? Do we need this? Do we need our pivot tool? Obviously different, seasonalities, you might carry different stuff with you, but is there something that's above and beyond just what our normal crews carry every day? That was always a big one. I think another thing too that was really helpful for us was we always had like a checklist that myself or our estimator would look at the end of the bid before they finalize it, and it would be like just the random things to remember that sometimes get missed, right? Is it nothing but ladder work on an exterior? You're painting fascia, soffits, and gutters, and you're just up and down a 28-foot ladder all day, right? You probably need to maybe add in a little bit more time that your production rates may not factor into that for just constant up, down, ladder movements, etc. Are you working on steep slopes on an exterior with your ladders? Are you got a lot of roof work? Your interior, is it a foyer around a chandelier with a really tricky staircase that you might need to add in a couple hours just to maybe have another teammate there to help with some safety stuff, right? What are the things, and obviously you can add to that when you catch yourself doing your job costing and you realize you missed something, add it to that checklist if you want, right? And so I think like there's just a couple, again, things in the process there that help set that production team up for success, even if it is just allowing a few extra hours for some stuff to help take that pressure off of them.
Yeah, actually, I probably didn't do a good enough job of doing that stuff. I would just write 24-foot ceiling and then kind of leave it for someone else to pick up. Again, it's that whole, I want to be carrying as much bandwidth as I can at that time to focus on the needs, the quoting part, and and selling
Yeah.
to that person.
That's
So
good. One other thing I see people kind of slip on a little bit is kind of the next action rule. Why is the next action rule so powerful in sales? And explain a little bit about what that is.
yeah, so great question, and I love it. So my whole thing that I say all the time, I try and come up with like the three P's, little things that are
Yeah.
memorable.
Yep.
So for me, it's every interaction has to have a next action. So when you're leaving, that starts when you get off a phone call with someone. That first step, when they contact you and they want an estimate, next action will be you're going to send an email, and then you send that email. Then the next action will be you turn up when you say you're going to, and you turn up. The next action will be you're going to send them a quote by the end of that, and you do that. And it really kicks into gear and really becomes highly important at the end of the estimate when you deliver the quote and the price. And the next action is, yes, let's get on the schedule, or at the very, very least, when can I follow up with you? When are you making a decision on this?
Yeah.
The likelihood of you closing a job, if you don't have that in place, it just plummets. I don't know any specific data off the top of my head. I do have something somewhere, but the next action part doesn't stop after that. Once you leave the job site, it then continues for every single time you contact that person. So if you say I'm going to follow up with you on Friday, and you follow up with them and they don't answer, straight away I send them a text message. Hey John, sorry I missed you. I'll be calling you again at 2 p.m. Same thing, and that's repeated until they answer.
Yep.
Or until I say, hey, I'm going to close out your proposal after 4 or 5 times, whatever you feel comfortable with in your company values. So that will always increase the chances of you selling a job.
Yep. Well, I think it's just always good. And because where I see a lot of contractors kind of fail at this is they go do a quote, put all this time into it, they do it, and they don't ever follow up. Right. And again, it becomes a process and a system. Like if I tell you I'm going to call you on Friday, before I pull out of your driveway, I've got a system in my head that I put a reminder in my phone to call you on Friday, right? Even if it's something, so you utilize your CRM, utilize whatever, maybe it's a task in your CRM, maybe it's something that, again, you just have to use calendar for, right? I had somebody say, hey, can you call me Wednesday between 11 and 12? And I was like, yeah, I'm free. What did I do? I went to my calendar, I put a reminder in, call so-and-so at 11:15, alert at time of event. So I don't forget to call them Wednesday between 11 and 12, right? So I think that's a big part of it is just, again, there's not structure on the back end of things to be organized. But I love the next action thing. You always need to let people know how to do business with you, right? Yeah. You get to the end of the quote and the homeowner goes, so what do we do if we want to move forward? No. You need to let them know, hey, if you guys want to go ahead and get scheduled in, call or text me, let me know. We can go ahead and get you slotted into the schedule. Our office will reach out and get your deposit together. But your next action, if you want to do business with us, you may not say those words, but like kind of spelling it out to them is like your next action is reach out to me and let me know you want to move forward, and then we'll start the process, right? So always make sure that, you have a next action in the sales process, but also make sure you're letting them know what their action is if they want to do business with you. Right? If they do need time to think about it, if they are getting quotes, if they need to talk to their spouse, what does it look like is that next step to how to do business together?
Yes, I actually would recommend, if you are going to do that, and I think I would highly recommend it, pulling your calendar out in front of them and putting that in the calendar right there and then. Okay, when can I follow up with you? Friday. Perfect. I have 2 p.m. available. Does that work for you? Ideally, you've got a busy calendar as well where you can show them how busy you are, and it kind of creates this little weird dynamic and shifts things in your favor a little bit. But then they're knowing, and I've actually had some estimators over in the past push back on this a little, where they say, oh, so I like to do that because I want to make sure that it's in their head that they have to make a decision by that time and value everyone's time who is participating in that meeting and everything. Before. I had an estimator and they said to me, well, that's just putting too much pressure. And then what happens is they get anxiety over this follow-up and stuff. And I actually, for probably a few months, I allowed it to fly, and the data comes straight back and says that's not the case. We spoke about this in week 1. People want certainty. They want to know how to move forward or kind of how to get you out of their hair. And I think in our mastermind with Micah from Olive,
Yep.
he said like something around like, on the first phone call, he'll come straight out and say that like the very least that we ask for is an answer. That's it's a bare minimum. And I
It's
think
just yes or no.
yeah, just a yes or no. It doesn't even need to be a yes. And I think, yeah, if you go into this whole sales process with the mindset of I'm here to help, I'm here to consult, I'm here to advise, I'm here to create value for someone and educate people, it really makes this whole follow-up process a lot easier. Because at the end of the day, you're following up to ask questions, be a resource. You're not following up to say, choose me. We actually just spoke about this in our one-to-one.
Yeah.
Choose me now or you'll never work with me. You're not my kind of client.
Yeah. Right.
So.
Yeah. Nope. That's very true. We were talking about somebody on how not to do sales. So, what mistakes do you see salespeople make when they don't follow a process? Besides all of them.
Yeah, but like exactly. It's like this the part that's most infuriating is when you actually when you're the person that sits and writes out all these. I'm given that kind of mood today. I'm easily annoyed. When you're the person that sits and writes out all these processes, and then 3 months go by and operations comes back and you're reviewing job costing with your project manager and you're like, why 35% labor? Why 35% gross profit margin here? Why 29% gross profit margin there? And it all stems back to, oh, the estimator promised this and the estimator forgot to mention this and the estimator didn't include this. All that is avoidable with a really simple process. We actually turned our processes into checkbox exercises. Like we have checkboxes as our processes because it's like if you don't check one of these boxes off, high likelihood something's going to go wrong. And the way that I like to now position that is you're not going to pay the consequences. You might financially if you've got a commission tied to it, but the person that's going to be losing sleep at night is the person you sit across from in the office. And you're going to strain relationships between supervisors and project managers and everyone else in between. Clients, I mean, we haven't spoke with clients and all that. Like, just there's so many things go wrong when you don't follow up process.
Yep. I think for me too, I mean, you talk about mental clarity, right? And when you're at the estimate, your like main goal is to build a relationship with that homeowner, right? If they know, like, and trust you, there's a good chance they're going to want to do business with you if everything else checks out: price, quality, service, delivery, everything. And so having processes in place kind of allows you to be mentally present with them, knowing that there's a framework, a checkbox, something that they can look at that's tangible to check off that they can just follow, right? Like I know for me, I've really done that even on my to-do list of like, okay, every time we record a podcast, what are the 7 things that Chris has to do with this file after we get done recording today, right? This has to happen. This has to happen. It has to go here. It goes to our media team. I got to send them a clip I want them to snip for promo. Like, and guess what? I just blood up because every week I felt like I was adding more things to it. And I would like go in and I'm like, oh my gosh, where do I even start? Now it's just a simple checklist. Great. Download the file, do this, right? And so I think for me, it's a mental clarity thing. It allows people to be present. It allows them to sew into what's most important. I can be on here having this conversation with you, not thinking about what do I need to do the second we stop recording and what do I need to do with the file? Because guess what? It's documented on my to-do list and a checklist. So I love that you guys are using checklists. And I think, again, just having these processes, you said it best earlier. You said if the train falls off the tracks, you know where to look at. And when you have a process that is repeatable and predictable, 9 times out of 10, when things go wrong, it's a people problem if the process is dialed in. Right. And if your process is good, then it's a people problem. Until the process is dialed in, you can't blame the person because you don't have the process. That's a Dan Martell thing right there. So we've been talking about it all morning.
It's true though, what you say, and it all, this is why I think it all comes hand in hand. Time management, we always talk about that and how we have to solve that for our clients. time management becomes less of an issue when you don't need to try and problem solve absolutely everything. You can just look at a process, see where the train comes off the tracks, and say, okay, I need to hyper focus on this one thing with you, and that will solve the problem, rather than trying to troubleshoot where is the problem. And then
Yep.
that mental clarity thing as well, like having that follow up, next action, it means that when you go into your next three estimates that day, you have that complete peace of mind, that mental clarity. And you said it, I said it, being hyper focused on what you're there for rather than doing somersaults in your head. Yeah, all mental clarity, time management, it all comes into this.
Yep. No, 100%. All right. Here's my last question as we wrap up this episode. What would you say to someone who's an owner with no plans to scale,
Mm.
right? Maybe their goal isn't to hire an estimator. The goal is to just get maybe a lifestyle business, six painters, two crews, 700K a year, just maximize the profitability. Why should they still have a repeatable, proven process in place if we haven't already beat this home a little bit?
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the one thing we maybe haven't spoke so much about in this one, and it's the client. So, fine. You're the person that's a project manager. You remember everything, totally understand that. It's a waste of your time. You can keep moving forward to maximize that profitability. Also understand that. But you're human. And if you are doing everything and you don't want to scale, you're probably wearing 1,000 hats, which means that you're more likely to drop the ball at some point. No,
Yep.
no, all your goodwill in the world doesn't matter. And who pays the consequences? Either your team or your client. Because your client has gut checked you, like Chris said earlier, and trusted you to say this person's the right person, because you might not have this process. So you're going
Yep.
to check, you're going with the natural charisma.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, painting's an ego like trade, right? It's attached to that the outcome because everyone can see it. Now
Yep.
they're saying, "Oh my goodness, I made the wrong decision. How could I have done that?" They're maybe answering to their wife or their husband or their mum, whoever they made the decision on behalf of, saying, "I got it wildly wrong," because actually you're a really good person who's got a really good business. You've just made an honest mistake because you're rushed off your feet.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
So
I love that. I mean, again, going back to the time and the systems thinking, right? I think that's where a lot of business owners, that's the difference between people that treat it like a business and people that treat it like a job. Regardless of what your goals are in terms of scale and growth, is if you have systems in place, you're thinking more long-term business minded. If you're trying to just wing it every time because everything's in your head, you own a job. And that's okay if that's all you really want. But I think for most people, even if you just want that, again, six people, 700K business, which is nothing wrong. We talk about that all the time. If that's what you want and that serves your life and your family in terms of time and money, then great. But let's like maximize your time and be better about it, right? Have some structure behind it, because it will make things more routine. It will increase your closing rate, so you're more successful and have to do less estimates. Maybe you can charge a little bit more money, right? I mean, there's a lot of variables that go into that. Let's have a proven, predictable system. Let's not just show up and wing this every time and hope for the best, because you're probably going to burn a lot of extra time in doing that. And again, it leaves a lot of room for error and bad margins on jobs that shouldn't happen.
yeah, what do you think that if you're to sit and calculate all the dollar figures, what do you think would pay dividend in the long run? Sitting down for a couple hours and learning your system and having it written compared to all the estimates that you do that you might not win because you failed the process check. You passed the gut check, but the process check wasn't there like the other two or three professional companies who have all the systems in place. I wonder what that time comparison is. And I think that's something we often overlook is like everything's got a dollar figure to it when you're in business.
Yep.
So yeah, it's and all that stuff interests me. Is
Yeah. I love
uh,
it, man. I will say this as we wrap this episode up. If I was going to have a painting company for the next 5 years, let's go back to that lifestyle business owner we're talking about. Stuart, I honestly think I would invest at least 50 hours into it now because I know the investment of that over time. And it doesn't take 50 hours. Let me be very clear. Like I'm thinking, like you said, maybe 5 to 10 hours at most to really dial this in and get it repeatable and maybe tweak it as you go through it a little bit. But the value to it, if I'm going to, again, have a painting company for the next 5+ years, it would be worth 50 to 100 hours for me to sit down and dial in now, because it's going to save me 5 to 10x that over time easily. And, I'm a fan of buying my time back. So with that being said, man, this has been fun. I really enjoyed this. I'm glad we did this series. I hope it's coming across the way that you and I intended and wrote this to kind of happen and manifest here. Next week, we're going to wrap the series up here. Part 4, we're going to talk all about objection handling and how do we create lifelong customers in your business. So don't miss next week's. We're going to wrap this whole thing up and take us home. And we look forward to seeing you next week.
I hope you enjoyed that episode and were able to take away a few nuggets to implement into your business. If you loved this episode, please leave us a rating and a review. It helps others on the platform find our podcast, and it could be the best blessing that's ever happened to them thanks to you. We at Elite Business Advisors are a huge supporter of the PCA, the Painting Contractors Association. If you're not familiar with the PCA and all of the benefits of membership, I highly recommend you check it out at www.painted.org. That's PAINTED.org. It looks like painted. And last but not least, if you're looking for an outsider's perspective as you navigate growth, schedule a free business analysis meeting with us at www.elitebusinessadvisors.com. We work with painting contractors all over North America to help them treat their business like a business. Our entire team of advisors all have experience in owning and running a painting company, so you aren't just getting a team that is teaching off of theory, but tried and true application of principles and systems. Thanks so much for listening in today. We appreciate your support, and we'll see you back next week.
Paint Ed podcasts are produced by the Painting Contractors Association and are made possible by members and industry partners. To find out more about the upcoming educational opportunities or for more information about joining the PCA, visit pcapainted.org.